Hey guys, it is Kerry Bringle, and we are back. This is the first ever video episode of Live from Bullshit Corner. We took a 3.5-year hiatus from our audio podcast, which if you hadn't listened to, go back. There are 36 wonderful episodes, but we are back, guys. We're back for good. We're back with video, and we're happy to see you now. Today, I've got two co-hosts with me. I've got Sucka Shane Smith, who you know from our audio podcast. I've got Nathan Wells, who you know from a few of our audio podcasts. Unfortunately, Dresh couldn't make it today, and neither could Patrick. But here we are. We have got a great interview today with Michael Billelo of the AWA, where he's promoting whiskey, American whiskey, all around the world. So I'll have that later on in the show. But guys, what do you think about being back and being on camera this time?
Yeah, I'm ready. It took a while,
I love it. This fancy new studio we have.
I had to set all this shit up.
Habitat for Humanity did a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
We've got Mike Causey on the production from Broadcast Brewing, one of our good friends who helped with all of the previous 36 episodes. If you hadn't been to Broadcast Brewing here in Nashville, go check them out, especially before one of the Nashville Soccer Club games. It's a great tap room. Of course, we're sponsored by Peg Leg Porker Bourbon. We have our new limited time release out, Spirit of America. We're going to do a toast on July 4th, Toast to America at 7:06. Well, let's get into it, guys. We are going to go with our regular format, guys. It's news of the day, news of the weird, and then we interview our guests. So we're going to get into it today with the news of the day. Guys, a cultural icon and TV icon, largest landholder in the United States, Ted Turner, has died at 87 years old. Certainly a divisive figure. Let's see what we got on here. Some of his backgrounds. Turner Enterprise announced that he died surrounded by family, no cause given. Actually, it had been revealed in 2018 he had Lewy body dementia. I don't know what the hell that is.
I forgot what that was.
It wasn't good for Louis. It must not have been good for Ted. I can tell you that much. All right, so he founded CNN in 1980. It was the first 24-hour news channel, and then he built an empire around that included TBS, which was cable news' first superstation. And then he was nicknamed the Mouth of the South for his famously unfiltered style. I can relate to that. He was a championship sailor. He won the 1977 America's Cup. I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. He put together a team and a boat, wanted to bring that shit back to America, and did a great job. He pledged $1 billion to the United Nations. Well, that's wasted fucking money right there. I can tell you that. And so anyway, whether you loved or hated cable news, the guy who created the 24-hour news cycle was Ted Turner. What do you guys think about this?
I think he could have won a lot more World Series with the Atlanta Braves in the 90s with that pitching rotation.
Mm-hmm.
A little disappointed.
I think it was tragic.
That was the sad part.
So what was his ex-wife's? What was her name? Crazy?
Oh, he had Hannah with Jane. Fonda.
Yeah. That
was his wife.
Hell yeah. Leg warmers, work out with Jane.
Yeah,
or whatever,
absolutely. Well, she did those jazzercise videos or whatever.
3.5 minute ads.
Bun crunches.
Look here. Shane and I are the age where they used to have that shit on HBO where they do that. What was it called? Aerobicize.
Yeah, but they had
24-hour squatting and everything. Man, I tell you what.
They had those 24-hour info deals on
that show was leotarded.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it was good. You remember you'd watch that?
Yes.
Was it on HBO or Cinemax? One of those. And they just just like
Skinemax late
it
night,
was just like
Tuesdays.
thumping music and cinematic shots of these women just yogaing it up. Squatting and doing this.
I was thinking they were running like one of the cable channels. They were running like 24/7.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Stuff.
That must have been your skin.
Probably on
PBS,
maybe.
It was one of those.
Pre-internet porn right there.
It might have been on his network, his other channel, right? He had
TBS.
Yeah.
Turner Broadcast
Superstation.
System.
Oh.
Did they throw his ashes in Golden Pond?
Yeah, I got you. So Ted Turner was a pretty divisive guy.
Mm-hmm.
He, I think didn't TBS make a big name with wrestling?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
WCW. Yeah.
They had WCW, and it was big broadcast and stuff. But also, Ted Turner was very vocal critic of. He was a big Democrat and vocal critic of Trump, and pretty politically, polarizing, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think in today's standards he was that terrible, honestly.
Well, that's fair enough.
So.
In today's standards, Ted Turner probably pretty damn moderate.
Mm-hmm.
Now Jane Fonda's not, but Ted probably was, and
Well, I think
he
Ted,
also.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just think he wanted to play on his ranch and do things like that.
Well, he did, and so he was like the largest landholder in the country. I'm trying to think how many acres I think he had something like it was over 1 million. It was a couple million acres.
I think he could go from like Texas to Montana without leaving his property.
Yeah.
Let's
something crazy like that.
Up the Rio Grande. And,
yeah.
Because he was raising all those bison.
He may have been
How many acres of property did Ted Turner own?
7.
2 million acres.
Wow.
Good. Googly moogly. That is a lot of land.
Yeah. What's the property tax? If that was in Nashville, what would the property tax be on that?
If that was in Nashville, the property tax would be at least $1.2 million. No, it'd be more than that. Hell yeah, 2 million acres?
Yeah.
Oh,
His
God.
property tax, if he was in Nashville, would be $1 billion. Would be $1 billion.
Probably, yeah.
Oh my God! Tell him to call fucking Tom Morales and tell him about that.
Yeah.
So anyhow, that is that's the news. You didn't hear as much from Ted Turner later in life.
No,
but
so he wanted to go play on his ranch and get out of all
he forgot how to talk.
Well, yeah, I don't imagine that Louis dementia helped him out any much. That Louis dementia.
I got over it.
Yeah, I don't imagine that helped any. But anyway, I'm trying to think what else we knew Ted Turner for. He was just pretty outspoken.
He had all that bison.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's right. I forgot.
That's what the land was. He was raising all the bison. He had Ted's Montana Grill.
Still
here in Nashville.
He brought back the American bison.
Yeah.
He was largest herd in the world.
Thank you, studio audience.
Yeah, he brought back the bison. He was a conservationist, and that's part of the reason why he had all that land.
For the bison?
For the bison, 100%. And then he ate them all up at Ted's Montana Grill. And you go get a
still going, right?
Oh yeah,
there's one here.
Going.
West End.
Yeah. Bison's pretty good. It's just so super lean that it doesn't have the fat that gives you that flavor that I like.
Well, it's good for you.
But it's good. It's supposedly
I've never
better
had it.
For you.
Is it similar to elk? I guess maybe.
Yeah, it's very dark and it's not marbled at all.
Ugh.
Yeah, so
sounds like it doesn't taste very good.
Yeah. So anyway, it is what it is. Well, let's get into the news of the weird. All right, listen to this. A Massachusetts woman unleashes bees on deputy at an eviction. So Rebecca Woods, of 59 years old, was found guilty of assault and battery after unleashing hives of bees on officers carrying out a friend's eviction. It wasn't even her eviction. One officer was hospitalized. The others were stung repeatedly. She lost roughly 1,000 of her own bees in the chaos. That was a bee massacre right there.
Yeah.
Some crushed, some perished after stinging. The friend she was defending, a cancer patient in the 80s, wasn't even home. He was at the library researching how to stop the eviction. Well, she taught him how.
Mm-hmm.
She got 6 months in jail. So they said this is the most Massachusetts crime ever, or is it the most medieval? Deploying bees against an officer of the law.
Well, yeah, you got to. I think they're making a movie. I think it's a bee movie though.
Mm-hmm. Starring Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah,
is he the police officer? Or is he the bee?
Yeah, he's a bee.
Yeah, that was a lame ass fucking joke right there.
I'm kind of thinking the officers should have watched their beeswax.
That was even worse. You guys. That was a sad joke right there. That was. I wish you'd had a better joke than that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
same. So I don't know what to say about it.
I don't know. I'm guessing they were all white. It sounds pretty waspy to me.
Yeah.
That's a better joke. There you go.
Absolutely. Went
Anyhow,
up again.
yeah. So anyhow, that's the news of weird for the day. What about Nashville, guys? Let's talk about this. So we've had quite an uproar here in the last couple of months. You know, I've been very vocal about taxes, and now the taxes paired with we had another tax increase paired with a reappraisal from our assessor's office has driven some bars, and so my taxes have gone up 800 or 900% over the last 12 years, and I've been very vocal about that. Been in the news, talked about that constantly.
It's better than 1,000%.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but this year it hit Lower Broadway. Now that's when you really started hearing everybody coming out and screaming, and so we had some bars here. Tom Morales got on the news, and Tom's a friend of mine, and so is his daughter. They're good people. They've got Acme Feed and Seed, and they got on the news, and their taxes went from $140,000 or $140,000, I think, maybe $160,000 a year on a property that they lease because they've got a triple net lease. To this year, it is $600,000.
Hello.
On their property tax. That goes to nothing. The crime downtown is worse. The streets are worse. And so what is he getting for that money? More bike lanes, more speed humps.
Transit
I
system.
want to say
The transit system that's not a transit system.
Not a transit system, yeah.
Yeah.
Cushions.
And then Layla, now this is the real tragedy. And Tom is working hard and does a lot of great things with Acme. The real tragedy is probably Layla down there, who has been there for over 30 years, and Robert's Western World, the same thing. I don't know what Robert's taxes went to, but I know that Layla, her taxes went from, I think, $140,000 to $500,000. This is an independent business owner that's been down there,
Iconic
on Lower Broad since it was a cesspool. You know, she bought that place from the Roberts folks, I think 30 or 32 years ago, stuck it out during all the crap years on Broadway, all the filth and all the cesspool stuff that was down there, and then made it to this golden age of Broadway where people are printing money down there, only to have the city come in and go, guess what? All your hard work has paid off. For us.
Yeah, right.
For us.
Yeah,
not
you.
for
Thank
you.
Thank you. Yeah.
For us. Yeah. And so
my first drink in Nashville was Robert's.
Robert's is great.
1996.
That's where most of the locals go. If you're going, you get a bologna sandwich or a burger.
Onion
all
rings,
the hipsters
PBR.
get their PBRs there. And anyway, they got great music. It's a great place.
And they acquired the neighboring building.
Yes, they acquired Jack's Barbecue. Right. And Jack Coffin, his barbecue
great guy.
Business is 50 years old this year. Well, congratulations to our friend Jack. Amazing guy. Really one of the pioneers of the Nashville barbecue scene that the rest of us have benefited off of his work and his hard work over the years. Well, guys, if you don't have anything more to add, I'm going to go on to the interview with Michael Billelo. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today, so I did it remote with him. But that's going to wrap it up for the intro. I'm going to start my interview with Michael. And guys,
cheers.
We will see you next time.
Welcome back, podcast.
Cheers.
All right. Hey guys, it's Kerry Bringle. I'm live from Bullshit Corner. I got a remote interview today. I'm real excited about this one because I got Michael Billelo, who's the CEO of the American Whiskey Association. Did I say that name right?
You did, Kerry. Very impressive.
Okay, so Michael leads the American Whiskey Association, and their job, I'll let him explain it more, but basically what their job is to make sure that American whiskey and bourbon is known throughout the world and that we are the leading whiskey in the world. Right now it's Scotch, so we got a little bit of catching up to do, but we're ready to take on that task, and Michael is leading the charge. And so Michael, welcome to Bullshit Corner. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. I believe you're up in D.C., aren't you?
I am. Yeah, I certainly am. Speaking of bullshit corner, but yes. So first of all, Kerry, thank you for having me on today. I really do appreciate it. I listened to your podcast. We have mutual friends who've been on this podcast. It is a ton of fun, and obviously, congratulations to you, the entire Peg Leg Porker team, what you're doing with that brand of American whiskey. Tennessee whiskey to be specific, and also the commemorative bottle, which I received and took a look at, real good look, and I'm hoping we can talk about that during this episode. But yeah, you're correct. So I'm the president and CEO of the American Whiskey Association. Our job is to protect, promote, and lead American whiskey around the world. And we have a simple mission. Together, we are going to make American whiskey the world's whiskey. So just as you said, we're going to compete. We have the heritage. We have the standard. And God knows, people like you, we've got the storytellers. So we're ready to take the world over. Scotch, better watch out.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, listen, before we get too much into the industry side, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and how your career path led here to American whiskey and what got you to this point where you're the CEO of the American Whiskey Association?
Yeah, and sometimes when I'm, either having a great time with someone like you or in Singapore, just met with the Ambassador Sinha and the agricultural team there, going to be doing a lot of visits to other embassies, meeting with other U.S. ambassadors and working with their market access teams to make sure that, we can export and compete on a level playing field worldwide for American whiskey. That's important, something that I'm really proud to spearhead. So when I'm in these environments, and I'm drinking American whiskey and celebrating and raising a glass, in an ambassador's residence in Singapore, I sometimes say to myself, how did I get here? And it's like everyone else in life, right? It's a long, meandering road. I did go through Nashville at one point. We'll get to that in a second. And I have been to your restaurant even before we knew each other. So I feel like a kindred spirit in that part. But yeah, so I was born and raised for the most part in New York, Long Island. But then my parents moved down to Tampa, Florida when I was about 10. So I grew up in Tampa. So I have all this New York edge and Floridian sensibility, but also a love for fishing and water sports and golf and all the things that make Florida great. As well as, a good appreciation of Skinner, right? So go to Florida State University.
I was going to ask you whether you were a Springsteen fan or Petty fan, Tom Petty.
No, I've got to go with Petty on that one. Proximity to Gainesville. Yeah, and we'll let Springsteen do his thing in New Jersey. They may have us on pizza, but they do not have us on Petty. That's for sure.
I like that.
Go to Florida State University. I interned for then Governor Jeb Bush. I was his press and legislative aide. I saw all the lobbyists in town, and the smartest people in the staff went to law school. So I was going to go to law school, took the LSATs. Parents were very excited, right? Their boy's going to be a lawyer. But then I also secretly dropped a application in the United States Marine Corps Officer Candidate School program, but did not tell them. I think this was, a child of the 80s, growing up on G.I. Joe, World Wrestling, Hulk Hogan, who later became a client, telling me to say my prayers and take my vitamins. I was, I've been waving the American flag since I was a very young boy. And so I always wanted to serve, always. Yeah. Go through the summer. Now my parents think I'm going to law school. I already graduated from Florida State University. My parents think I'm going to law school. And I get a phone call on 9/11 from the officer candidate program in Orlando, Florida. Captain Jackson Reese calls me and says, hey, I want to let you know we received your application. Congratulations. You've been accepted to officer candidate school. And I said, wow, this is absolutely amazing. He said, hey, by the way, turn on your TV. Are you watching this? And so I turned my TV on, and I see that one plane had hit the first tower. I remarked to my dad, who worked in Manhattan for a very long period of time, and he said it wasn't uncommon for small planes to lose their way and strike buildings, right? So second plane hits the second tower. I'm still on the phone with the OCS officer, and I accept the invitation to earn the title of Marine and become an officer. I do that. I get through officer candidate school, get assigned to 1st Marine Expeditionary Forces out at Camp Pendleton. I was a public affairs officer, 4302, and so I escorted major media outlets from Kuwait to Baghdad and back. I had Dr. Gupta from CNN with me, who famously performed brain surgery on a Marine who had been hit by a sniper. Corporal Vidania, shout out to Corporal Vidania. God bless you. God bless Dr. Gupta for saving your life. So Iraq, escort media, return home safely with my Marines. 10 fingers, 10 toes. We're very thankful for that. And I meet my now wife, and she's living in Los Angeles. I moved to LA, get into public relations, start my own media relations agency, public relations marketing agency. Start to work with professional athletes in Los Angeles. Did that for almost a decade. Sold that business to one of my executives to divest myself from that business. We had Delaney Walker and Brian Arapo on the Tennessee Titans. So that was my brief stop in Nashville.
Yep.
And I get a phone call from a friend whose sister-in-law is working for a 3-letter agency here in D.C. and says, hey, they need someone to help run TSA, but you would be a Trump appointee. So I moved back to Virginia after this long and winding road from Florida to California to Tennessee. Wind up back in Virginia, Washington, D.C., and I was an appointee in the Trump administration. I was an assistant administrator at TSA, Transportation and Security. And, as a 9/11 Marine, the aviation security mission made complete sense. So I served with some great people there. Administrator David Pekoski, one of the smartest and best leaders I have ever worked with and for. A great guy, Coast Guard Academy graduate, MIT grad, just a really smart and great guy. Was recruited out of the administration into Wine Spirits Wholesalers of America. Was there for 7 years on the distributor side of things, and then was just recruited by the American Whiskey Association founders to head up this project, which I'm really excited about. You asked me, you got the full answer. I took you on the scenic route. Yeah,
that's great. So your time in the Marines, how do you feel like that has shaped you and prepared you for the leadership in this task with this role with the American Whiskey Association?
Yeah, people say to me, God, it had to be really tough. The Marine Corps had to be really tough. And I say, yes, but I also had a Sicilian mother. And so, growing up in that household was far more strict and disciplined than any Marine Corps environment. I joke, but not really. Love you, Mom. But the interesting part about this is, the Marine Corps, formative years, right out of Florida State University, get thrown to a mix, and the difference between, I think, Marine Corps officer candidate school and enlisted Marines is enlisted Marines, when they go to Parris Island or when they go out to San Diego, as they call them, Hollywood Marines out there, they're going to get you through, right? They're going to push you through that program. You may wash out, you may quit, but they're going to push you through. They're going to make you a Marine regardless. Officer candidate school is a little bit different. They're trying to wash you out. Because you have a really big responsibility of leading Marines, and no matter what your MOS is, as I learned later in Kuwait and Iraq, is a Marine is always a rifleman first, and that really means what it means, and also in the way in which you deploy, it's very important. So it's a big responsibility, and you got a bunch of knuckleheads right out of college. And so you want to make sure that whoever gets through is the right people to get through to become Marine Corps officers. And I passed that. Taught me a lot of things, right? Make sure you're taking care of your people, right? Ductus exemplo, leading by example, which is something I think that you do very well, and some of the best people in our industry do very well. Never ask your people to do anything that you have not done before or aren't willing to do yourself. I think that's kind of important, and why, when I look at your career, look at my career, we've done the entry-level jobs, right? Like you, I've bussed tables, I've washed dishes in restaurants, so I feel like that gives you a little bit more credibility when you go to a restaurant or when you open up a restaurant. Same thing with the Marine Corps, what I'm doing now. I've done every aspect of the job for almost 30 years now, and so it gives you not only credibility, but I think it gives you the discipline and also the both the technical and strategic parts of your job, which I think are important. And also, I think, service to your country. I would serve our country whenever they asked me to. When they did with TSA, I was happy to do it. I would absolutely do it again. And regardless of what political parties in power. That's the one thing that I learned also in the Marine Corps that's really helped me here in Washington, D.C., especially our current political climate, is always remain bipartisan, right? The solution never has a party stamp of approval on it. When I was in the Marine Corps, if we were helping each other out, if we were in a tough situation, I didn't ask, well, before I help you, can you tell me what political party you're with?
Exactly.
Who'd you vote for? What are your pronouns, right? That never happened. So I don't do that in my professional life. I respect you if you do. I hope you respect me. This is how I choose to operate. But it's always led me success. It's always kept me right in the middle. It's always grounded me in facts, in data, in science, in logic. And it's allowed me to be successful. So I learned that in the Marine Corps, and I take that forward with me as the president and CEO of the American Whiskey Association.
Well, that's great. In the restaurant business, I'm a very opinionated guy. Most people know that. But the thing is, we feed everybody, and so I have to temper my responses sometimes and temper my attitude, because we feed everybody from every political affiliation and from every race, color, and creed, and we want everybody to feel welcome in our restaurant, and I was never able to serve in the Marines. My father was in the Marine Reserves. My great uncle actually retired a 4-star admiral. He commissioned the Kitty Hawk and took it on its maiden voyage, and then he commanded the 7th Fleet in Vietnam. He was a real war hero. He went to Annapolis, and then from Covington, Tennessee to Annapolis, and was an All-American football player at Annapolis, and then went on to have a very prestigious military career. His name was it was Floyd Bringle, but they called him Bush Bringle because he had bushy hair. And so, and then the funny thing was his son went to the academy as well, my cousin Donald, and he became a naval aide to Bush Sr. When he was vice president. So we have my favorite picture in the restaurant. I've got my great uncle's bio there with his write-up from the New York Times when he passed. But my favorite picture is I've got a picture of my granddad in the middle of World War II on the island of Luan as a naval officer, and they're cooking whole hogs with the natives there on the island of Luan. You see the Kwanzaa huts in the background, and they're wrapping the pigs in the banana leaves and putting them in the ground. And I thought, from Covington to the Philippines, and the one thing they both got in common is they're cooking whole hogs.
I mean, you gotta love it. And by the way, I served with a lot of great men and women from Tennessee. There are a couple of states that produce outstanding military leaders. Virginia, where I'm at now, being one.
Sure.
But Tennessee, Texas, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, the Carolinas. And what I love about these folks is that, when you're deployed and you're away from home, you're homesick. I mean, and I'll admit it. I was, and this is why, would not be a great career Marine, because you spend so much time away from home. But, we're all getting homesick. Sure. And what I loved about the young Marines, from wherever they were, is that they always brought something with them. So the fact that your uncle was cooking whole hogs on an island while, running away from, enemy attacks is probably pretty amazing.
Yeah, that was actually my granddad, my uncle. So they were both serving at the same time. My grandfather was the older brother, and my great uncle was the younger brother, but they were both serving actually on both fronts in the in World War II, which was pretty fascinating. I've got some great memorabilia that's really pretty cool. But
very cool.
Well, let's get back to the American Whiskey Association, and you touched on it a little bit, but can you get more into what's your mission at the American Whiskey Association, and as the new CEO, what is your goal for the first year of your tenure to try and accomplish and get out there? You said you were just in Singapore, and that's amazing. We are
lucky. We've won best in class at Singapore World Spirits with the Tasting Alliance with our white label, which led us to a world title, a world's best bourbon in 2023. But tell me about your mission, and then what you hope to accomplish. What does a successful first year look like for you?
Yeah, so the mission, again, is to make American whiskey the world's whiskey, and we're really set out to protect, lead, and promote American whiskey around the world. What does that mean? Making sure that we have market access to key export markets. And there are some really promising export markets when we look outside of the United States. We all know the current situation in the U.S. is that we're sitting on a lot of whiskey, and the consumer demand is not there for us to, I think, what we would all consider, fulfill the full potential of American whiskey. And what's interesting is that, this industry, as old as it is and as mature as it is and as wise as it is, really the focus always was on the domestic market. I mean, we own the U.S. market. And that's really, I think, led to a lot of the foundation that we're seeing in terms of how American whiskey is ready to launch, if you will, globally. And when we look overseas, there have certainly been some, pioneers going back to the 70s and the 80s that began to export American whiskey and introduce it to markets like Japan, right? And some even say that during the last or the last few cyclical downturns in American whiskey, that export markets like Japan became so critical to Kentucky and Tennessee when domestic sales were down. So again, when we're seeing domestic sales stabilizing in negative territory, although there's a really interesting story to be told about premium products and premiumization, which I think is still thriving, and there is still a great appreciation in America for American whiskeys, bourbons, rye, wheats, Tennessee, and really runs the entry point all the way up to ultra premium. There's something for everyone, and so that's why I think it's continues to be a pretty stable category in the U.S. But we have to look at export markets. When we look at export markets, what do we know? Well, we have our established export markets, right? UK, EU, really established and important markets to American whiskey. But then beyond that, we look at some other markets that have been prohibitive for American whiskey to compete. And I will use both India and Vietnam as an example of that. And so what our job is to do is to make sure that markets that are established, like the EU, the UK, that we protect the access there, that we continue to have good relations there, and we have free-flowing trade both ways. And in this current political environment where there's a lot of talk of tariffs, whether those tariffs are real or those tariffs, there's a threat of those tariffs, we have to make sure that we work with both sides. We keep lines of communication over. We deconflict where we can. We share data. We share information. We educate and inform our respective government agencies so they can better communicate to their principals. We don't want things to escalate. We want things to stabilize. We want there to be, zero for zero. We want there to be free and reciprocal trade. And so for those established markets, that's important. That's our mission. That's where we're going to live. But where there's potential for growth, like in India, right, the largest middle class in the world, the largest American whiskey market by volume in the world, or whiskey, it will be American whiskey by volume, but it's the current volume leader for whiskey that includes Scotch. But we have 150% tariff on American whiskey there, 100% for bottled bourbon, but 150 on everything else. And then you've got the bulk component to this. So, we've got to work with our U.S. trade representative here, the administration here, and we have been. They've been very receptive. We are cautiously optimistic about a historic deal in India that I think we've been working on. We may hear some details on very, very soon that will open the doors for American whiskey at the central government level. And you've got some challenges with the states within India where they assess taxes. So even if you get a favorable deal at the central level of the Indian government, you still have to contend with those state level taxes. You still have to contend with the challenges they have there where they'll raise taxes on a regulated product, a licensed, regulated, safe to drink whiskey. But then that will keep the cost just out of reach for the consumer there. So then what does the consumer do there? They go to the illicit market. So one of the things we're trying to educate both the Indian government, but also the state governors there, is that when you overtax alcohol, and this is a universal truth worldwide, and you make it too expensive for consumers you make it dangerous. You fuel the illicit market. So there's a lot of things we have to still work on in India, but there's a lot of potential there. And then what you just mentioned, the visit to Singapore. I mean, what an amazing island. What an amazing country. What an amazing culture. The food is amazing, but also the bar scene, the mixology. You've been there. It's very premium. It's very informed. There's a big affinity for American whiskey there. They love working with the higher proof expressions, because when I went out, I noticed, doing my market research, a drink there is about 25 to 30. And so they want, if they're going to have one or two drinks, they want it to be higher proof. The mixologist wants to be able to work with something that's versatile, and also tell a story while they're making the drink. When you think about storytelling, higher proof expressions and versatility for a mixologist, that's where American whiskey really thrives. So Singapore, I'm calling it the peacock market for American whiskey. We need to go there. We need to show them our best. We need to engage with the mixology and bar scene, the hospitality scene there, because it's very elevated and it's drawing from around the world. If we make a good show there, it'll be our springboard, into Thailand, into Vietnam, into the Philippines, the rest of Asia, quite frankly, where American whiskey has great potential because the consumer wants it. And I think in India, the same thing. There's a demand there. We have to get a better trade deal, which I hopefully we get that soon. Big potential there. Our established markets have to keep access there. If we're going to make American whiskey the world's whiskey, we have to do it globally. Latin America, another promising market. And Canada, right? Our friends in Canada, really, really unfortunate situation where once again
they've taken most American whiskey and bourbon off the shelves in Canada. Haven't they?
Yeah. Yes, they have. Alberta and Saskatchewan are the two only territories where you're allowed to have American whiskey on the shelves. Wow. But the rest of the place, there's been a complete put out or a boycott, and it's because we're getting caught up in the politics and the political exchange between their government and ours. So again, working with my friend Cal Bricker at Spirits Canada there, great guy, and we're trying to get the best possible deal and continue to work with our other partners, as well with other trade associations to make sure that we get a better outcome.
Sure. So now when you're out there promoting it, how are we trying to or explaining the differentiation between Scotch, Irish, Canadian, Japanese whiskey? What is your pitch on American spirit, American whiskeys and bourbons? How do you make that differentiation and make us stand out? Because as we talked about, Scotch right now is the number one out there. I'm not a Scotch drinker. It just doesn't appeal to me. My father was, but and my son is, but I'm a bourbon guy, And how do you tell that story, and what is the differentiator that drives the mission of the American Whiskey Association?
Yeah, so I think it's telling the entire story from seed to sip, grain to glass, whatever you want to say. But I mean, that is really where I think the American Whiskey Association is differentiating itself, is that we represent not only the distillers, right, which is obviously the sexiest part of what we do, but it's also the ag partners, right, the mom and pop farms. And that's what's remarkable too, is no matter where you go, right, when I visited with you in Tennessee, when I've been up in Kentucky, all over, I always ask them, like, who's your ag partner? And you expect, because you read so much about big ag in everything else. That's not the case, right? With American whiskey, most of these are mom and pop farmers where there's a multi-generational relationship between the families, and they're all friends and the kids. I mean, it's pretty amazing. But also the standard of grain, right? The testing is that, I don't think people understand that unless you've been to a distillery. And even when you go to a distillery, I've watched people at distillery. I don't know if they realize this, but that inspection process of any grain that goes into the distillation process, that's a standard that I think needs to be talked about, celebrated, renowned, whatever you want to say. So I always tell that story about the grain, where it starts. Then you can get into the water, right? I mean, there's some interesting water stories that can be told, and then you talk about the distillers, and these are, the big brains, they're scientists essentially. You tell that story. You talk about the different mash bills and the different yeasts, and when you're telling this story. And by the way, I am learning to be proficient at it, but I am not as great as those who have been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years. I can listen to them all day. But it is much like, I think about the Native Americans. They talked about being, a society, a culture based on storytelling. This is what American whiskey is, right? We have to be a category that really prides itself on storytelling. And, 99% of it should be true. But that 1% that isn't, that's always the best part. And it always is the most entertaining. We should never lose that. But telling the story, right? That's how we differentiate ourselves from everything else. Then I think we look at what Scotch has done very well, right? Age expression. So one of the things that I think we all run into overseas is when, you're drinking something and they say, well, how old is that? And you say 3 years, 4 years, 6 years. And they go, oh, well, have you had this? This is 15 years. This is 18 years. This is a 200 years, whatever. And you're like, okay, time out. This is where we go back to the American white oak story, right? Yeah. This is where we go back to the folks like Brad Boswell and the Boswell family, Independent Stave Company, and Space Eye Cooperage, and all the greats, and the trade association that has all these great cooperages as part of their members. You start there. You start with that ingredient, the American white oak. No one in the world has that. And we're talking about unused American white oak barrels. And then we talk about what these companies have done by way of innovation to add different seasoning and have different, have that barrel do different things and during that aging process. And when you talk about that, and then you share an expression with someone who is only used to the 15, 16, 18, 22 year, and you say, that's only 3 years, that's only 4 years, that's only 6 years, their heads explode, right? And on a couple of things, right? First, the color. They look at the color. That color is remarkable. Yeah. Right? By law, we can't add anything to that. That's a unique standard to American whiskey. There are other whiskeys in the world that they are adding, coloring to their whiskey to get a certain effect. We can't do that. That is all naturally derived by that barrel. So I always tell the American white oak story. The coloring gets them. Then the nose, right, which is obviously pulling from all of that, but especially that barrel. And depending on what that barrel is charred and how it's cut and how it's finished, I mean, it's just remarkable. Again, I'm becoming proficient talking about it, but to answer your question, I tell that story. I then share that, and then I think we take on these age expressions head on, and we have to inform and educate the consumer, but it starts with the bartender, it starts with the hospitality manager. We have to educate them that don't always go to, age 15, 18, 20. You should look at the full story, the full picture. And that's where I think anybody who's in there to educate them on the American whiskey portfolio and start to go through the different brands, whatever you're promoting. If you start there, if you start with how it's made, why it's different, what's unique, the standard, the heritage, the tradition, from seed to sip. Don't forget that American white oak piece. Don't forget that 1% color, right? That may not be true, but it's part of the story. You do that, we're going to be well positioned. We're going to compete globally, and we're going to win.
Well, and what the Scotch drinkers sometimes don't realize is that they're getting juice that's gone into barrels that were previously used for American whiskey or American bourbon. And we sell those used barrels, Jack Daniels does, George Dickel does, to Johnny Walker for their Scotch, and to the other distilleries for their Scotch. And the difference between a new charred white oak barrel and one that's already matured is monumental. You know, once we get past 8 years of age, you really start to taste that oak. It can be overbearing, you know, depending on the expression that you buy, depending on the brand that you buy. But that depending on the char, depending on the barrel, you start to get an overwhelming sense of that oak. Whereas after it's mellowed, after it's already had a lot of that flavor come out of it, then it goes on to Scotch. You know, I bought a batch of 14-year-old Canadian rye. Excellent juice. I bought 200 barrels and sight unseen. And when the sample came in, that stuff was so light that I turned white as a ghost looking at it. I thought, where is the color? I can't sell this. Nobody's going to believe it's 15 years old when it's got no color on it. And so we ended up double oaking that with some toasted oak cubes, which brought the color up to our standard and what we wanted, added to the flavor because it was American white oak cubes that we double oaked it with. That became our Pitmaster Reserve second edition. It's a 15-year-old rye. This excellent bottle. And it was double oaked on American white oak for 6 months. And we specifically did that to enhance the flavor a little bit, but also to bring up that color so that we had it that was something that was acceptable to the American consumer. Because if the American consumer sees a bourbon or a whiskey that looks like a dark vodka, they're not biting. They don't want to. They don't want.
No.
When I see oh, go ahead.
Yeah, you drink first with your eyes, right?
Yeah.
And they say the same thing. You're in the food business as well. They say the same thing about food. And by the way, the other competitive advantage I think we have when we look at the world's cuisines, look at Indian food, look at in being in Singapore, Chinese, Thai, Vietnamese, Filipino food. Whiskey pairs really well with all this. It pairs so well with the world's cuisine. Do you feel the same way? I mean, especially with barbecue.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm a pit master by trade and a barbecue man, and so I don't know many barbecue people that don't drink bourbon. They go hand in hand, and the barbecue world got me into the bourbon world. And I've always been a bourbon drinker, but they do. The flavor enhancements are the great. Now, unfortunately, what you also get sometimes with a bourbon is you get the bourbon snobs along with the barbecue snobs that want to tell you how it has to be done or what their standard is. And I like to say, well, hey, I'm the pit master here. I don't need you telling me how it needs to be done. I like to say, don't tell me how to cook my shit. You tell me whether you like it when it hits your plate. And I would say the same to the bourbon guys when they ask all these questions. Are you a non-distilling producer? What kind of still? What do you do? And I say, look, you either like the juice or you don't. It's just as simple as that. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. The process of how I get there legally has to be a certain way with bourbon, but and with barbecue, you want it to be cooked with wood. But how I get there is not as much of your concern as whether you like what hits the plate or whether you like what hits your glass. And it comes down to a lot of that simplicity where a lot of people get too caught up in here's the tannins, that taste, leather, smell, this and that. And it just gets kind of annoying sometimes. I tell people, if you're looking for a tasting where I'm going to tell you about the nuances of what you should taste and how it should feel in your mouth, you're talking to the wrong guy. If you want me to bring a bottle and us sit around and drink that bottle and I'll tell you some great stories, then you're talking to the right guy. Let's have a fucking good time and enjoy this bottle of bourbon and not worry so much about the technicalities of it.
And by the way, this is how wine got themselves in trouble, right? They built this moat around wine. They made it totally unapproachable.
100%.
The snobbery was absolutely insane.
Yeah.
I laugh because I bet you the barbecue guy who comes in, he's been working on his green egg at home for a year and he thinks he's an expert. And then, some of the bourbon nerds are quite entertaining as well. Though we salute all of them. We appreciate all of them. We need them too.
No, and I think you hit on a point right there that really hits home, which is it's got to be accessible. It's about accessibility, and like you said, you know, in India, they've got the largest middle class in the world, and to be quite honest with the people that are listening today, the bourbon and whiskey producers have kind of been afraid of India over the years before these tariffs came into play, because India is so vast that producers, even like Jim Beam and Jack Daniels, who are huge, worried that if they go into that market and they hit and it sticks, then how can they ever produce enough to satisfy that large middle class population? It would drain all the bourbon and all the whiskey out of Tennessee and Kentucky to satiate that audience, and we would have none left for the American audience if we really hit a home run in India. It's that big of a market.
You're right.
And there's great opportunity there, but it comes with a capacity ability to have to be able to satisfy that market if you do hit a home run over there. And that's what, you know, nobody wants to go over there and then have a shortage and not be able to fulfill the market.
I know, and imagine a time, right? And I feel like this would be a time that we would somehow celebrate 1 minute, but then the next minute we would be terrified. Is if we went from the opposite problem or challenge we have right now, where we have rick houses full, to fast forward, you know, India is, you know, taking everything out of the U.S. and we say, we need to up our production. Listen, that's what's so exciting about this, right? Is that when you think about American whiskey, it's really like America in itself. It's a lot of risk taking, right? It's a lot of storytelling. It's engineering. It's partnerships. It's being champions and diplomats for it and promoting it, which I think we do very well. It's part of our soft power, and we should be using more of this throughout the world, along with our movies and our music and our art and our influencers and all of that. We should be exporting, you know, the soft power, the great stuff that we have, and focusing more on that. And so I think that's what's exciting about this industry, is that right now, you know, everybody wakes up and you read the industry news reports and you say, man, this is tough right now. I don't want to read any more bad news. But you gotta look ahead, right? You gotta look at the future. You gotta look at the growth potential. You gotta have confidence in our product, confidence in our distillers and what we do, the stories we tell, the partnerships. Look at the vast networks we have. Look at the potential we have in India and in Asia. Look at, you know, what I think we have to also understand is that, American whiskey has in some cases, like Canada and in some of the trade and tariff tensions we have right now, been caught up in the middle of a lot of these fights. But when you go overseas and you sit down at a restaurant in Italy or in Paris or in Singapore or in New Delhi or in Toronto or in, you know, somewhere in Brazil, they, for the first 5 to 10 minutes, right, you're going to get those questions. Hey, man, what's going on, you know, in the U.S.? Are you guys okay? Once you get past that, it goes right back to what brings you together, what commonalities you have. And that typically is, you know, food, family, work, and whiskey.
Yeah, and, you know,
that's what it always comes down to.
And, you know, there's a lot of doom and gloom talk in the industry in the United States about the bourbon market or about the bust. And, you know, but what I don't think a lot of people realize is that we've been on an upward trajectory like this. It's been if you look at the graph, it's like this. The difference is we got a big hump right here. And so the trajectory has not stopped. We're still growing as an industry, but we had a big hump during COVID where everybody was at home, everybody was drinking, and we got a big spike. And we've just come off of that high, but we haven't really deviated from the trajectory that we were on previously. It's just it's almost like a false top, you know, where people got fooled into thinking that this huge time and huge boom was going to be the new standard. And it really wasn't. There's a developer here in town, Tony Giantara, who's a friend of mine who builds the biggest buildings in Nashville, Tennessee. He builds the largest towers. And we were at lunch the other day, and he had a great statement. He said, you know, you get people that think that when times are bad, they're always going to be bad, and that's their outlook. And then you have people that think when times are good, they're always going to be good, and that's their outlook. And he said, what I've learned going through 8 of them is that there are cycles. There are, it goes up and it goes down, and it goes up and it goes down, but it cycles, and it's always going to cycle. And, right now in Nashville, they're having to give away 3 months free rent for these apartments. And I said, well, Tony, why are you still building them? You're still building while we've got this. You tell me you can't make any money off this building you just finished because of that 3 months free rent. And he said, Kerry, it's because of the cycle, because it's not always going to be like this. And it's going to go back up. And I think that that's part of the story with American whiskey and bourbon. And so from there, your outlook, what do you think the next 10 years holds for American whiskey and bourbon? What looking at it from the perspective of the CEO of the AWA and going out there and selling to the world, where do you see the market in 10 years for our Native American spirit?
Right out of the gate, it's going to be up. I will tell you that right now. It will be up. Also, I think that the innovation that's going to take place, you could look at, and I've talked to a few people about this, you could look at the amount of whiskey that's aging in warehouses as one of two things, an asset or a liability. And I think a finance person looks at it differently than somebody who's in charge of, innovation and blending and coming out with new products. And when I visit all of our member companies, no matter what the size, the innovation that's going on is tremendous. So I think the consumer, right, if we do things correctly, is going to win big, right? I think that the consumer is going to get some insanely good American whiskey. I think the next 10 years, we're going to see some of the best finishes, the best whiskeys come out. And I say that confidently because I know what people are working on. The second thing is, I think in the U.S., we have to get back to telling our stories, owning, occasions, owning celebrations, owning, our local markets, and talking about how this product is derived naturally, right? Talk about the ingredients, talk about America, talk about what this means. Let it bring people together. I think we really need to get back to that here in the States. I also would like to see some more creative advertising. I know we have to toe the line. We take responsibility very seriously, but we have to get back to our creative roots in advertising and being compelling and being interesting, because to get anyone's attention today, you have to either be, very, very interesting or absolutely controversial. I don't think we should be controversial. I think we should be compelling. We can do that by telling our story. The next thing is AWA has to lead the efforts opening up our markets that hold a lot of potential. So this India deal is a really, really big one. Working with our industry partners in Asia. Asia has a lot of potential as well. But then for our markets that are established, long-standing friends in Europe, right? Look at Germany. Germans love American whiskey, but there's a lot of potential there, right? They still have not been introduced to a lot of our different expressions and finishes. They've got there's some really deep American whiskey cultures there and communities there, but for the most part, there's still a lot of potential there. France as well, different palate, but I think there's a lot of potential there for the blends and American single malt and some of the premium finishes there. England, right? England, another amazing market, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So we've got to keep those markets intact, keep them open, making sure that we're competitive. Canada, right? We've got to resolve the issues we have in Canada. Some of those things are not in our control. We can only control what we can, but we've got to keep our relationship sound there. And when things, I think, settle and our political or our politicians' differences has nothing to do with American whiskey or Canadian whiskey having differences, we'll get back to that market. The good news is I've seen the reports coming out of Alberta and Saskatchewan from my friend Cal Bricker over at Spirits Canada, and Canadians still have an affinity for American whiskey. They are still drinking American whiskey where there can be sold. They're ordering it. When things were suspended there were warehouses full of American whiskey, and the government said we have to do something with this. So they opened it up to an auction, and those warehouses were emptied out, I believe, in a very short period of time. So the demand is there. There's no other product like it. So I think we're gonna be okay there once we resume normal operations. Latin America, big potential there as well. So just globally, we have to start thinking globally. We have to think about how we can get our products in the hands of consumers around the world. We have to tell our story. We have to be proud of our traditions. We have to talk about our high standard. And once we get, I know it's a big cliche, but once we get liquid to lips, we win.
Yeah, I think, you touched on innovation there, which I think is really important. We've got new barrel methods with toasting instead of charring. We've got people using, exotic different staves or barrels. Of course, we have to stick with our standards. But, Buffalo Trace did the whole experimental series over a number of years. People are working with different woods, different flavorings, different methodologies. I know one craft distiller brought back a 3-chamber still, which was something that had been gone for a long time. With us, we're in the state where Tennessee whiskey and the Lincoln County process is prevalent, where you filter through sugar maple charcoal before it goes into the barrel. So, what we did at Peg Leg Porker to tie in the barbecue with our bourbon was after we debarrel, we run it through hickory charcoal. And that's our finishing process. And it's unique. It's something that I developed that's different. It's a differentiator. It changes the flavor of the bourbon, and it gives it what we think is an award-winning flavor. But that was an innovation that nobody had thought of or nobody had done before. And so I think the more that producers do that and come out with new innovations, the more people we're going to draw into our world. And certainly from a global perspective, we need to consider people's palate. We need to consider their flavor profiles that they have an affinity to with the different foods that they eat. And how can our whiskey or our bourbon fall into that flavor map for those countries and make it attractive for that? And so I think you really touched on a great point there. I want to let's look forward 5 years with the AWA. What do you hope to be able to say that you've accomplished after 5 years at the AWA? Where do you think you will have taken American whiskey, and what are your goals for that 5-year period? And what do you hope to be able to say, this is what we accomplished?
Well, here in Washington, D.C., I definitely think that in 5 years, and in a shorter period of time, I think we'll be able to say that we really engaged smartly and efficiently with with the administration, with the Trump administration, and really educated them, informed them, worked with them, partnered with them where it was possible to ensure they understood the entire process. Right? We just recently saw President Trump make an announcement about Scotch whiskey tariffs because he was informed and educated by advisors on his team that the barrel trade's very important, right? Yeah. It's very important to the whiskey ecosystem. For a president to acknowledge something so far down in the supply chain, that didn't happen by accident, right? That was very much so a result of targeted advocacy. So I think that's an example. Also making sure that we have an opportunity, right, to promote American-made products. President Trump is really focused on American dominance globally, and so talking about this being an American agricultural product is important. Making sure that we take advantage of all the promotional benefits and opportunities we have through things like the market access program, the ag department programs, commerce, the great work that USTR does overseas, our ambassadors representing us overseas, telling our stories, making sure that we can do business fairly. I think that's something that we're going to be very proud of. I think we're really setting the stage well, working well with this administration, working well with its officials. I think the India announcement, which hopefully will come sooner than later this year, I think is going to be a historic opportunity for American whiskey. Once those details shake out, I think that's going to be something that will certainly be another defining moment for the American Whiskey Association. There's some legislative things that I think we could do here in DC domestically with things like duty drawback programs that are part of well-established, well-regulated and run federal government programs that make American exports more competitive. So I think we do some stuff there. We also, I think, have opportunities to make sure that we make sure the laws are protecting and celebrating. We have our proper heritage days and months, and we use those opportunities to educate lawmakers and policymakers. So domestically, I think there's a lot of work to be done here that translates to global opportunities. I think, obviously, would be great over the next few years to see how this USMCA deal works out, right? With Mexico really making a very strong pitch to the administration that they should be getting a sizable investment and become a major trading partner in the U.S. With Canada, obviously, right now, there seems to be sort of a standoff in terms of trade and what we agree on by way of steel, aluminum, and automobiles, and again, American whiskey is involved in that, which you may or may not agree with, but it's being it's part of that process, like it or not. So we got to focus on that. I think Europe, seeing those numbers grow when we look at coming back from Singapore, seeing that American whiskey is up 40% in that market according to the data that I saw. And that's above and beyond all the other world's whiskeys. I mean, that's pretty promising because it starts at Singapore, but then it propagates throughout Asia. And so I think, making sure we have good market access to Asia and our member companies support it. Listen, at the end of the day, if we win here in Washington, if we work with our member companies and all the American whiskey companies globally, and we really activate, energize our networks, we make sure that we're plugged in and talking to our trade partners. We're also helping them work with our government, so it's reciprocal and fair. I think that we will be further down the path of American whiskey becoming the world's whiskey, and that'll be backed by data. That will be backed by real deals. That will be backed by a body of work that over 5 years we can all be very proud of. That, I think, is what defines the next 5 years. That's what sets up the next 10 years, and that's what will define the next 100 years for American whiskey being the world's whiskey.
Well, and even in my travels over in overseas and in Europe specifically, you go to a bar and you get a cocktail menu and it's got 5 or 6 Scotch whiskeys on there, and it might have one bourbon, maybe, or it might have Jack Daniels, and that's it. And I think, even the American traveler who's overseas, they want their native spirit. And I think for the more we can get proliferated in that market, the more we can get embedded in those markets, it's going to be better for American travelers. It's going to be better for foreigners to be introduced to this product because it is such a wonderful, wonderful product. Well, Michael,
I think you're right.
Oh, go ahead.
Kerry, real quick, though, on that point, the mixologists are our evangelists. So I think we need to start bringing their mixologists here and teaching them basic American whiskey cocktails that they will bring forward. And when they have, that's where it starts. It's at the bar.
100%. I saw, actually, we've got here in Nashville, I just saw the other day that we've got a London bartender coming into town and doing a residency in one of the hot neighborhoods here. For about 3 to 4 weeks, and I think that's great. And I think that's where they're going to get educated, is coming over and doing those types of things. So I got one last question for you here, and then we'll wrap it up. I know you're a busy guy. If you're drinking, do you like it neat on the rocks, or do you prefer a cocktail?
So it depends on the time of year, right? So I'm up here in Washington, D.C. I'm on the Virginia side of things, right in Arlington, McLean. And so I would say that in the wintertime, I find myself drinking a lot of neat whiskey because there's ice outside. I don't want ice inside. But when it's the summer and, maybe I'm going down to see my family in Tampa, Sarasota, I'm at a Florida State football game. It's hot. Tailgating. I'm definitely going the Japanese route, and my friends at Suntory, dude, I mean, a highball, American whiskey, lemon, soda water, a lot of ice. I mean, that keeps you going, all day. So it depends on the time of year, but I celebrate the whole catalog, every method, every way. And by the way, before we go, I have done my very best. I've bit my fingers so I don't open this. I've got to try this. Tell me about this real quick.
Yeah, so that is our latest bottle. We're actually we bottled yesterday. We're bottling today. That is Peg Leg Porker Spirit of America Bourbon. And what we're trying to do with this release, it is a 250-year anniversary release, but it's also, we own the trademark Spirit of America, and it's also a celebration of what is the American spirit. I've been fortunate that I've been able to live the American dream. I had bone cancer at age 17, growing up here in Tennessee, born and raised in Nashville, and here in Tennessee, my family settled in 1827. I had bone cancer. I was able to overcome that, go to school, get out, go work, ended up starting a company and a brand, Peg Leg Porker, as a play on the name of losing my leg. I literally am the Peg Leg Porker. I've had great success in the restaurant business now, and we've been named Best Barbecue in the state 7 out of the last 10 years. And then in 2023, our bourbon got named Best Bourbon in the World by the authority, the Tasting Alliance, who is probably the top tasting authority, which was amazing. Yesterday, I got the news I'm one of the 10 finalists for the Barbecue Hall of Fame, which is a huge, huge deal. And so this expression, which is 100 proof, bottled in bond, is the epitome of the American spirit. This is what, this is what this bottle means, and that's why we've got the USA Pig on there. This bottle is really a celebration of every hardworking American and everybody that's out there trying to live the American dream. And so that's what we really want to celebrate. And one of the things, like you said earlier, politics doesn't need to play into it. We can all get along. We can have a healthy debate if we want, and we can all have a drink together. So what we're proposing, and I got my glass right here with one of my Bulldogs, Fred, on there. We unfortunately lost him this last year. I got Roscoe in the back here behind me. But on July 4th at 7:06, we want the world to have a drink together. And so we're saying, hey, yes, let's have a drink together. We don't care what your race is, color, creed, what your political affiliation is. We can all enjoy the American spirit, and we can all have a drink together. So on July 4th at 7:06, let's all raise our glass and have a drink together.
Well, Kerry, count me in, and also I will add to your toast. First of all, congratulations to you. First of all, as a young man overcoming what you overcame, and I have friends who were amputees. That is not easy. So you're an inspiration to anyone who has to deal with both being a cancer survivor but also an amputee. So cheers to you for that. Cheers to you for amazing barbecue. I've had it. It is very good. And by the way, that's almost being from a music city. That's like your Grammy, right? When you get that type of Hall of Fame recognition for barbecue, it's kind of like your
big
Grammy
deal for us.
Yeah. So we need to definitely celebrate that. And then obviously what you've done with this whiskey brand, telling the American story. I remember talking to you about the American 250, and you told me what you were going to do and what you and your team have actually done and executed on. Just amazing. So congratulations to you, and rest in peace, Fred.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Rest in peace, Fred. And anyway, so count us in. I hope everyone raises a glass of American whiskey, because you shouldn't toast America with anything other than American whiskey in your left hand, maybe a pulled pork sandwich in your right hand from Peg Leg Porker, but that's sort of the limit. So cheers to you. Thanks for having me on your podcast. Very conversational, very comfortable. I enjoyed it. I'll come back anytime, and maybe we do it from the restaurant at some time.
We would love to. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know you're extremely busy. We couldn't be more excited about the new American Whiskey Association and its leadership with Michael Billelo. Thank you, guys. Y'all have a great night, and cheers.
This is very good, by the way. Cheers to you, too.
Guys, what a great interview with Michael Billelo. He is a great guy on a great mission, and certainly as a spirits company owner, we actually just got accepted to the American Whiskey Association, and so we're proud members, and he's got a great mission to make American whiskey overtake Scotch whiskey and be the #1 whiskey in the world. So it's great. He's a great guy and a great ambassador for our country. Guys, what do you think? First episode in the can on video.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Mm-hmm. It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a little weird under the lights and all, but I guess we'll get used to it, right?
Well, we used to do this at the corner of the bar on Friday night with just audio, and it was fun. It was great, and the background noise was dynamite. We're a little bit quieter here. It's a little bit not as much dynamic, banter in the background, but we're having a good time.
Yes,
and
got a little bit more
serious. A little more serious, and but I think it's going to be great for the future of Live from Bullshit Corner.
Yes,
guys, thank you for joining us tonight, and we will be back with the next episode. We've got Clayton Anderson, who will be our next guest. I'm excited. Indiana boy, that big songwriter, big musician, got his own bar. And so that'll be on our next episode of Live from Bullshit Corner. Be sure to check us out, and we will see you next time. Cheers.
There you go.